Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Black Ops Cold War in Depth. In today's episode, we're finally moving into the secondary weapons with the 1911 pistol. This might be the most underutilized weapon in the game, which is kind of sad because it's actually a pretty solid backup weapon and surprisingly useful at long ranges. Other secondaries really aren't as versatile as this one, but this one is just overshadowed by the simplicity of shotguns and akimbo weapons that excel in close quarters combat. The 1911 pistol is so strong, it's actually GA'd in professional Call of Duty, and what that means is it's a gentleman's agreement banned. It is not banned in the official rule set, but all of the professional Call of Duty players that you all know and love, like Scump and Clayster and those guys, decided that it was too powerful and worked with other players to gentleman agreement ban it so that other pros won't be using it in competitive, which is kind of crazy actually, given how not good the pistol looks at an initial glance. If you want to support me in the store, please use creator code DRIFTOR, DRIFT0R. It has to be all caps and the O is like a number pad 0. Technically that makes this sponsored by Activision, but don't overthink it too much. Let's talk about the stats of the 1911. The 1911 bullet velocity is 200 meters per second, which is hilariously slow. That's not tremendously faster than how much faster you throw a grenade or a tomahawk. Those are about 50 or 60 meters per second. This is like you can watch the bullets moving across the screen kind of speed, and you really don't want to be using this pistol outside of about 20 meters, which is its maximum damage range, because after that, of course, you're only going to need more shots to kill, but the bullet velocity is going to be so slow that it's going to be difficult to kill people. And yes, 20 meters is the maximum damage range, which actually isn't that shabby for a pistol. Let's talk about damage on this little thing. The base damage is kind of impressive at 50 per shot. If you run the final barrel or task force barrel, it's going to go up to 54 per shot, and that's going to be very important in just a moment because this is a 3-shot kill pistol in all regions. That's actually very low shots to kill in this Call of Duty game in general, since we have 150 health. Not a lot of weapons kill in 3 shots. Some of the DMRs don't even do that, but this one definitely will. However, it can take 4 shots at long ranges because you will have some damage decrease, but 1 less with headshots. You can still 3-shot at long ranges if you're hitting them in the head all the time. Now, what's interesting about that little task force barrel is that it increases the headshot damage up to 78. And 78 times 2 is more than 150, which means you can 2-shot people to the head with the 1911, and that makes the time to kill incredibly fast up close. It's probably one of the strongest things about the weapon, and I'm embarrassed to admit that I was not good enough to make use of it for most of this in-depth video. I do have it on for a few clips here, but I really struggled with this barrel. It can be incredibly useful for your time to kill. It's incredibly useful in close quarters combat where not a whole lot matters. But this barrel has major horizontal and vertical recoil control issues and magazine capacity downsides, to the point where I found it wasn't super useful because I couldn't reliably 2-tap people to the head outside of them kind of being in my face, at which point I was probably just shooting and meleeing anyway. So it's a fantastic attachment. It's a top tier godly attachment if you're good enough to use it. I just wasn't manly enough to make good use out of it, but I do think that you should know about it for in-depth. Rate of fire is 400 rounds per minute, which is pretty fast overall. Like, a lot of games don't let you shoot the pistols that fast anymore, so that one's pretty snappy. And when you math this one out, the 3-shot time to kill, which is going to be your most normal time to kill, is 300 milliseconds. And 300 milliseconds compared to all the other weapons in the game is what I would call probably average, mediocre. Most of the weapons in Black Ops Cold War kill in about 300 milliseconds, plus or minus a little bit. So the time to kill on this pistol is basically the same as any other normal weapon that you might have if you were running Overkill, or what is this, Lawbreaker in this one. Seeing these stats, you would probably expect me to tell you that the true strength of the 1911 is to put on the task force barrel and just get in people's faces and 2-tap them to the head, and that is a strong part about it. But I think that the true strength of the weapon, where it really shines and why it's banned, is it has the lowest recoil in the pistol class and has the best iron sights. And I really want to emphasize that the recoil on this pistol is disgustingly low, and it is very easy to use. It is very easy to track your targets and see what you're shooting at with no optics needed whatsoever. I had a very easy time hitting people at surprisingly long ranges. Like, I mean, you see in the gameplay, there are some people with assault rifles that I managed to pick off with a pistol with the 1911, which is impressive, and I really assume that's why it's banned in comp. Well, that and the headshot, the 2-shot insta-kill thing is something that competitive players typically aren't into, but the fact that you don't need Lawbreaker or Overkill, you can just pull out a secondary weapon and beam people with the exact same time to kill is probably why it's banned, because competitive players aren't really going to miss any of those shots, and they will get that absolutely minimum time to kill, and it'll be kind of like a weird 1911 warfare. Handling stats are kind of fast, as you would expect. Aim down sights time is 225 milliseconds. By the time you're done putting attachments on it, you'll probably have it faster. Sprint out time is 216 milliseconds. It's very snappy handling overall because it's a pistol. That shouldn't really be surprising to you guys. But oddly, the sprint out to hip fire time is the slowest in the pistol class. The Diamatti and especially the Magnums are significantly faster, which means this one is probably more geared toward, aiming down sights and single pistol use. For that and a lot of reasons, I don't really believe that it excels at akimbo. During the next set of pistol reviews, you'll see with the Diamatti and especially with the Magnums, akimbo appears to be the way to go because it'll just significantly decrease your time to kill. It's pretty easy to do, and you can do it really snappy-like. But with the 1911, it's a smidge slower, and the damage and consistency isn't quite there. I didn't have a super good time going akimbo on this pistol, and one of the reasons is that the hip fire on this pistol is only 6.5 milliradians, which is half a milliradian less than standard submachine gun hip fire, which realistically, if you're comparing the two side by side, you probably wouldn't even notice the difference in game. However, all the other pistols just about have the same measurement, which is a little bit surprising. You would think that a pistol would have like tighter hip fire, that it would be easier to do, but it really kind of doesn't. It's a little bit wider than normal for most Call of Duty games. Base reload time is 1.8 seconds. By the time you're done stacking various magazine attachments on there, yours will be faster, but in the pistol class, this is not the fastest, but it's basically tied with fastest with the Diamatti. It's a really fast reload. You won't have a lot of downtime. Wouldn't worry about that one a whole lot. And when it comes to magazine times and reloads, I always use the biggest mags that I can put on the 1911 pistol. It's going to take 3 shots to kill within the optimum range if I'm not shooting out of it, and that's assuming that I'm not missing any shots or that there's not multiple enemies. This is a weapon where putting gigantic 14 plus round mags on there just makes a lot of sense, and they can help decrease your reload time. So always just put on the absolute best mags that you have unlocked. When it comes to my opinion about the 1911, I think that this is by far the most well-rounded backup weapon in the game, and it can be quite strong, impressively strong, I would say. It's got the 2-shot headshot potential, which you don't probably see a whole lot of on this in-depth because of the recoil problems I had, but I'm sure that some people make great use out of it. If you go with the low recoil build of the pistol, it's almost like having a secondary SMG or AR. As long as you're relatively accurate, it works up close, it works far away. It's overall very versatile, and if you were sniping or running a primary weapon like an LMG or DMR that has some sort of weakness or handling problem, the 1911 is a solid backup if you want an anytime, any situation kind of weapon. The problem with it is that it's just not as easy as the other secondaries. The Diamattis, the shotguns, the Magnums, they do not have the same long range or ease of use capabilities, but they just crank out damage up close. In close quarters combat, they just absolutely delete people, which is why they're popular. And that's also why when people want a backup weapon, they just take one of those and try to force their fights into close quarters. In my opinion, you should use the 1911 if you are a high skill player and you desire a truly versatile backup weapon. If you're good and you know you're going to hit your shots, if you got a good trigger finger and you want a weapon that will work in every situation every time, 1911 is probably going to be the way to go for you. All right, we're now at the part of the episode where I'm going to recommend my class. This is what you've seen for the single pistol throughout most of the video. I recommend the Agency Suppressor because it gives me a little bit of vertical recoil control. It does hurt my range, but we're going to fix that in a moment. I personally use the Reinforced Heavy Barrel most of the time. It fixes the range issues that I had with the suppressor, and it gives me some helpful bullet velocity. Now, if you're more manly than me, if you're better than me, you can go down there and put that Task Force barrel on and go for those 2-shot headshots, but your gun's gonna kick quite a bit more and you're gonna have less mags in reserve. The less mags in reserve is probably fine if you're using this as a true secondary weapon, but if you're camo hunting with it as a primary weapon, that might be a bigger penalty than you think. I use the basic steady aim laser on this pistol just because it's easy, it has no downsides, it doesn't hurt my aim down sights time or anything like that. And for the magazine, as I said, the biggest and baddest available with the Salvo 14 round magazine. Pretty huge ADS time penalty right there, but if you've seen anything on In-Depth, you know that I'm going to fix that. But it just gives me a giant mag, lots of ammo, fast reloading. Very, very hard to beat that if you're going to be running this as a primary. And then, of course, the Airborne Elastic Wrap. It's just a bunch of aim down sights time, flinch resistance. I can drop shot people if I want to. And I do have some movement speed penalties, but that's usually not an issue for me. Though I've been noticing I kind of under-kit my weapons for movement speed. Like when I aim down sights, I'm pretty much standing in quicksand a lot of times. So I might do some builds to kind of maximize movement speed and see how those work. Well, guys, that's all for this episode of In-Depth. We talked a surprisingly long time about a pistol. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and review. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.